understand disinformation is deliberate deceit to hide other things. And so there's so much of that. And some of it is surprisingly well-sponsored disinformation.
I'm going to sum up this talk and mention an overview of the alien agenda. The alien agenda is really decimate the planet to take the remaining human subjects as slaves, and the aliens would use this planet for their own means.
My question I'd like to ask is this. If the aliens have a 1,200 IQ, can speak all these languages, and are so powerful, what prevents them from just taking over?
Well, it's a good question. We're an alien species to them, and our germs have a tendency to kill them. They're also a dying race, and they're in far worse condition than anybody with the worst case of terminal cancer. They are in need of us to some degree.
And some of it is surprisingly well-sponsored disinformation.
So I think my question is actually to Clifford Stone. You said that you had seen aliens on a craft that had crashed. I wondered if you could describe what they looked like.
I could, but it would probably take a whole lot of time. The reason I state that, when I got out in 1989, we had cataloged 57 different species. You have individuals that look very much like you and myself that could walk among us and you wouldn't even notice. The situation is that you have various types of what we normally call grays. We didn't call them grays in the military, but you had at least 3 types of the grays. You had some that were much taller than we were. The unique thing that I'd like to point out for the most part is that the entities that we did catalog were in fact humanoid. Now this created a situation where the scientific community was trying to figure out why that would be the case, because you would expect that if life evolved on other planets, that they would take on some type of other being, so to speak, not necessarily look humanoid or be bipedal such as we are. But apparently we got quite a few of the species out there that are humanoid in appearance, and that creates a question that yet has to be answered by science.
Does that explain some of the visual glances of these things? They seem to just simply disappear. They're gone.
Exactly. I mean, they're appearing out of nowhere and then disappearing right in front of people. And that's why scientists who have no axes to grind, they just say that it doesn't make that much sense. And also, if they're just trying to observe us, to take account of what we're doing on Earth, I mean, after a while, after so many months or years or centuries, it kind of gets old. They either would take us over, or they've already discovered all the information they need to know about Earthlings, and so they're just going to take us over or make first contact and just sort of do what they need to do next to endlessly observe us. It doesn't make any sense. It's something where, and also see if we have all these sightings, as you know much better than I do. Where are they landing? We don't see them getting out to get anything to drink or to eat. We don't see them. They've never tried to make contact with any large amount of people in a major city, and so this doesn't. And also all the endless medical procedures that the people who have claimed to have been abducted. Why the endless medical procedures? I mean, if we're talking about such an advanced race of alien beings, they don't need to do that over and over and over again.
Interesting perspective. Let's talk about some of the facts out there of evidence that may support your conclusion that the UFOs are spiritual phenomena, not physical, like so many other people also believe. What can we pinpoint again?
Well, again, it's something where you cannot have a material or physical being penetrating the ground, penetrating the water, appearing in front of people, then disappearing instantly, and then also changing colors, sometimes only when they're accelerating, with every color in the spectrum has been recorded. Many UFOs coming and making one UFO breaking apart and then going into multiple UFOs. It doesn't make sense. And then not only just that, but to get into the fact of how far they're traveling and the speed that they would have to travel, and just the other problems with cosmic dust and traveling at the speed of light, and then running into those bits of cosmic dust, the explosions that would be created, the amount of energy that would be consumed in traveling from these distances. Just all those kinds of things really scream out that you're dealing with a spiritual phenomenon, not a material or physical phenomenon.
There does seem to be a deception here, because I've always wondered, you know, my gosh, if they're that benevolent, if they're that understanding of humankind, make yourself available.
And that's why you know, some of these other scientists have said that they seem to be trying to set people up to deceive them as if they are aliens, but the facts just say that they can't be that there's something else. It doesn't make any sense, and there's something else, a psychological deception that's going on here. And many of these scientists say, I don't know what it is, but we've concluded that it's got to be that. It's got to be something bigger is going on here than just them trying to show people that, yes, you know, here's a UFO that you're seeing now, we are aliens, that there's got to be something else going on here, on top of the fact that the characteristics of them show that they just cannot be some material or physical craft.
Do you think humans are involved in the deception? I'm losing my voice here. I got to pop it back.
As far as I think there have been deliberate hoaxes that have been perpetrated. And, you know, it's an interesting statement. I mean, there are many that could be quoted, but Gordon Creighton, who I know you know of him, probably, who died in 2003, he made this statement in the British journal Flying Saucer Review. He said, quote, "There seems to be no evidence yet that any of these craft or beings originate from outer space."
They appear to have the ability to materialize and dematerialize without a trace. One of the great mysteries of the UFOs isn't seeing them, is trying to figure out where are they when you don't see them. Some people say, well, they're from another galaxy. Most physicists will debunk that for lots of reasons. They seem to pose that way, but for lots of, if they came, you know, if there are that many coming from another galaxy, you think you'd sense the traffic. We'll come to that with some more reasonable explanations, and you're going to discover the two top researchers in the last century, really, is Jacques Vallée, France, and J. Allen Hynek, the American. Now, J. Allen Hynek was head of astronomy at Cornell, and he set out to debunk this nonsense about UFOs, and he became one of the most ardent, competent, balanced researchers in the trade. J. Allen Hynek, he died a few years ago. Both of these respected researchers came to the conclusion that they're not intergalactic for lots of physics. There are a lot of physics rebuttals to that conjecture. They both argued that these things are demonic. Their term. They've written many, many books. You can check them out. These are not religious people. They're not people with any kind of personal agenda. But they came to the conclusion that these things, on the one hand, and by the way, we take for granted that we strip away the nonsense and the hoaxes, set that aside. There's tens of thousands of files you have to walk through. When you cut through all that, there's still a core group, a substantial core group of real events that need explanation. And so on the one hand, they exhibit physical properties on the one hand. On the other hand, they also violate all physical laws. And so the conclusion from that both J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée and others have come to is that they're hyperdimensional, that somehow they come from another dimension periodically. But both of them came to the conclusion that these creatures are hyperdimensional. They're not from some other galaxy. They also both concluded they're hostile because they pretend to be something they're not.
Just getting the image.
Franklin, we see a long line, a couple of star-like things, and a lot of things swimming in the foreground. Can you describe what you're seeing?
Well, the long line is a tether, and there's a little bit of debris that kind of flies with us, and it's illuminated by the sun at such low angles. There's a lot of stray light, and it's getting washed out quickly, but Claude is trying to do a quick, good job here adjusting the cameras.
It wasn't until a few years ago that I really started to get into researching all this information and looking at, going through thousands of pages of information about UFOs that just confirmed, what I had already believed about this phenomenon. That I believe the evidence clearly points that they are, in fact, demons.
And, there are others, Brother Michael, who are now beginning to believe that as well. So you're not out there all by yourself anymore. So these demons would make them then spiritual phenomenon, I would take it, right?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, there's certain characteristics that everyone will agree has been seen and demonstrated also by these UFOs, such as they penetrate the ground, they penetrate water, they disappear in front of people, they appear right in front of people. One person will see a UFO and the person next to them will not see the UFO. They change colors, sometimes only when accelerating. They change shape, they change size. Many people have made the comment that they seem like they're alive almost. And so these are all characteristics of something that's not a physical or material being or construction. It's got to be something that's a spiritual phenomenon with those kinds of characteristics.
Somewhere between 1 and 3%, various polls agree, somewhere between 1 and 3% of Americans claim that they have had an abduction experience. That's over 5 million people, or in that neighborhood. Not a few thousand deranged people, not a few, disaffected. This is, we'll talk a little more about this. This is a very, very disturbing phenomenon in the counseling profession. Now, part of the problem of the UFOs is they have some paradoxical behavior. On the one hand, they're seen by multiple competent witnesses. They are plotted on radar, sometimes multiple radars simultaneously. They leave tangible traces on the ground, sometimes radiation, evidence of burning and other things. So they are apparently real in the sense of being physical, on the one hand. There are photographs. Sometimes they show up on photographs, sometimes they don't. But here's the problem.